Good morning, everybody, and welcome to episode 5, which is great, of our Sharing Management Business and Personal Challenges from the Pandemic. And I'm delighted to be able to bring you 2 of your previous presenters, but also 3 new ones, so that we have an additional range of expertise being brought to bear on issues which for many of us are still very, very uncertain. Today's session will cover, I think, many of the issues that have been raised by you as organizations, and then there are 700 people who have registered for this series, either live or through watching the videos, which are available very shortly afterwards. So continuity and scenario planning, we're going to have a question on that in a little bit more depth later. Strategies for communication through novel channels, serving clients in a social distance world. That's something we're going to look at in a bit more depth today, because increasingly I see social distancing as being probably it's a policy response, but it's also the thing that's actually creating, in many ways, the most difficulties for the management team. Winning mid to long-term business to sustain the workforce, how easy to win new business in the current climate. Financial management, I think most people are probably fairly aware of that one by now, if not the finance director, certainly made sure you are. The whole issue of what is essential and what's non-essential. Certain people don't like being thought of as non-essential. How do you furlough staff? What messages is that giving, not just to them, but to other people in the organization? Team productivity, morale, well-being, personal resilience. We had a really great session from the Behavioral Insights team a couple of days ago on the Hear from Experts series. That was really interesting. Cyber, heard about that last week. You know, you've distributed your network. Are you now distributing all the data as well? Reputation management, Lawrence is coming back next week to talk about that. And a couple really for you as individuals. How are you rationing your time to create space for real emergencies? It's really easy to be busy doing stuff that aren't that important. And finally, just get everyone to realize that everyone needs a break, and that of course includes you. I'll just take you quickly through who's on the call today. Francesca will be starting off today for a change, and looking forward to her thoughts on her week, or since she last spoke to us. And followed by Jeremy Beard, who again this is his 3rd appearance, talking about how is the managing partner coping with everything that's being thrown at him in all directions. And then our new members, Jan Dalgleish, the HR director of Collier Bristow, Tim Vorley, Professor of Entrepreneurship, Sheffield University Management School, and he gave most of the questions on last week's poll. So what we're going to try and do is ask him to talk a bit about some of the implications, and we've added a few new questions in from him this week as well. So hot off the press, and he also advises Innovate UK, so there's again quite an important link there to government through that route. Graham Durgan, chairman of the Non-Exec Directors Association, Institute of ICA chairman, ICA councillor, serial entrepreneur, and a few other things as well, which I know that he'll tell you about, but very interesting guy and very happy to give his opinion on most things in my experience. And we welcome Lucy Ride, who's Senior Policy Officer of Bays. Now, because of something to do with internal Zoom at various departments, she's joining us by phone, so apologies for that on her behalf, but they are hoping that that particular situation may be changed for next week. That would be lovely. And of course, yours truly. Poll is ended, so let's look through the results. On the first question, to what extent does your firm have the capability to deliver services and operations? Capability of full virtual service is the most popular choice. 47% did that one, 44% majority, none is just one person, I think, and 5% key client or essential services. So I think pretty much it's saying that almost everybody is now doing the majority, if not full service. The challenges, the crisis, what's the current time horizon for business planning? Up to 3 months, again, the most popular, about a third going for that one again. Only 9% looking beyond the year, so very much short-term perspectives, I would say that tells us. In terms of the groups at the firm, other business services, followed by marketing and but 40% of you saying no furloughing, so that's encouraging, I suppose, for the people involved in it, certainly. Looking at the impact on ability to serve existing clients, nobody thinks it's a good idea, which that doesn't wholly surprise me, but being good academic, you wanted the full range. Very much the same with winning new work, and less impact on managing suppliers, and less impact on passing work to other firms. So it's very much on existing clients. Training budget's about the same, some reducing, very few increasing, and again, that may be of interest to people. And how significant could the legacy impact of the crisis be in your business? The answer to there is for most people 4 out of 4, if not 5. So Tim, no doubt, will have views on that. How disruptive has it been at number 3 there? And I shall now invite Francesca to talk us through her week.
So I thought I would talk a little bit about our favourite topic, which is clients, of course, and what's been happening since we last spoke together around a client piece. There has been, now the poll's showing in full glory, so hopefully you can see that. There's been a lot happening around that client moment. I think probably all of us spent the first week or so of the pandemic working out exactly what was going to impact our businesses, make sure we were resilient, make sure we could manage things effectively. And now the focus has very much changed to making sure that our clients are getting the best possible service. Now we know where they're at as well. So no surprise to see a huge part of the last week has been around client related issues. And I think one of the things I find quite encouraging about this time is that you are still seeing work happening. It is possible to work digitally. It can be challenging sometimes, but you're seeing right around the world people being able to carry on doing a large proportion of the work digitally that they would have been doing face-to-face normally. So I think that's encouraging, and I'm sure many of you are seeing that you're able to deliver a lot of what you'd normally be able to deliver, just perhaps in a slightly different way. Another thing that we have spoken about on these calls before is you're beginning to see also a lot of people really making sure they're not just doing a hard sell to increase their client fees. They are doing the listening, the working out what clients really want to hear about, rather than doing the hard push. And you are seeing a backlash about hard push, which feels completely right in this particular time. You want to make sure you're listening to your clients. What do they really need at the moment, and acting accordingly. There's a slow return to work happening around the world. Quite a lot of governments are looking at lifting or beginning to lift restrictions. If you go to somewhere like Sweden, they never really did a full lockdown in any event, but other countries are saying they expect to have some kind of return to work around about the beginning of May. And obviously in the UK, we've got 3 more weeks of lockdown. And again, one would imagine there'll be some return to work coming through. And for clients, that means that things that they've put on the back burner because of the lockdown, they're beginning to see how can we get back into what the old normal might have looked like. And that's really impacting on their ability to plan ahead. It's really helping them to plan ahead about what's that going to return to work going to look like. I think that the feeling that everyone is getting is that it's a slow return to work. It's not going to be everyone suddenly is up and back and you're able to access clients and have face-to-face meetings. That social distancing point that Richard referred to is going to continue, and I would imagine continue for quite a while to come. So it could be that there is more of an ebb and flow to how things happen, with a slow return in some places. What it does mean is that some work that simply hasn't been able to happen may begin to take place. The audit related items, of course, around stock takes clearly have been heavily influenced by the lockdown, but also a lot of face-to-face work that has to happen in that environment may become a bit more possible in May, but I don't think anything is going to rapidly return. So a lot of people are managing that. Again, a little bit of a global view is that we are beginning to see a couple of governments around the world looking at deferring deadlines or giving a little bit more leeway around deadlines that might be audit related, tax related, report related. And that has a huge impact on professional service firms because, of course, how do you manage the downtime? How do you manage your talent retention, your talent management if things aren't happening in the same sequence that you'd expect? And that is, again, having a nice knock-on impact in terms of scenario planning. What does that really mean for how you manage your business if the deadlines you're expecting get slightly elongated? How do you work with that? So one a lot of people are pondering at the moment. And crucial to any professional service firms, we need to get paid. We need to get money from our clients, and we need to make sure we're being paid for the work we do. So again, you're seeing a lot of instances where people are making sure that before they deliver a report, they get the payment. Before they do the work, they make sure the payment is really clear. And if they are doing some reductions in payment, that's agreed upfront so that everybody knows where they're at. Normal practice, good communication always helps, but really important in this time. And again, I've seen a couple of instances where businesses are in real distress, clients are in real distress, and managing that payment element of it is a hugely important part of today's discussions. Last but not least for me, Richard, a little bit on training. Huge amount of online training going on in lots of different ways and means. I think quite a few people have used it as an opportunity to upskill in certain areas, but also I'm seeing a lot of organisations offering fantastic online training. In the first week of the pandemic, and first 2 weeks of the pandemic, lots of people were turning up to lots of events, and you can see people now becoming a little bit more selective, but also still a huge demand for anything that's around business resilience and anything that helps with the work-winning side of professional practices as well. So that's enough from me, Richard. I'll be happy to pick up questions later on in the session.
Thanks very much. That was really great, Francesca, as always. And I'd like to now turn to Jeremy and invite him to talk us through his last couple of weeks as the firm leader of Holmes McIntyre.
Thank you, Richard. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is keeping well and safe. Just quickly talk through the last couple of weeks at Hayes McIntyre. We have gone through our financial year end, so that was quite a lot of our focus. But we're now through that, and from a financial point of view, I think we're starting to now get a reasonable grip, as much as is possible, with regard to what the future might look like based on 2 or 3 different scenarios from an income point of view. We've been fairly tough at looking at our overheads, and we've made some big inroads into those, and other indirect costs. Our challenge, I guess, as a business, which is the same for any professional services business at the moment, is how we manage those direct costs when we're likely to be in a peak and trough situation for a period of time. So we will need all our people going forward, we hope, and certainly in the latter half of the year, but there will be peaks and troughs along the way, and how we manage those direct costs. Of course, at the moment, we've got part-time working options, furloughing options, but we don't know how long the latter in particular will be available to us. I think communication still remains really key for us, and we're certainly ensuring that we have as much communication with members of staff as possible, including those that have furloughed. We are having an all-staff update on a weekly basis, and we are meeting weekly as a partner group as well. And then there are various other groups within the firm that meet regularly during the week and discuss various aspects. We have taken the opportunity to have a bit of a new broom around bad habits, and certainly in particular around timesheets, billing, debt collection, that sort of thing, really sort of emphasizing the need to closely control those areas during the coming weeks and months. We are trying to get back to business as usual, certainly from a managing partner and management board point of view, get back to our regular meetings and our set agendas for those, and our regular reporting, so that we can get back to some sort of normality in those areas, whilst recognizing the need to address the more urgent issues. We have rewritten our Q1 business plan and updated our risk register, and certainly very much on my mind at the moment is the impact of the return to work. Francesca talked about social distancing, and Richard's talked about that. For me at the moment, I think it's more around the impact of our office and our people that I'm starting to think about, rather than the impact of the interaction with clients. Our service to our clients at the moment, whilst very different, is continuing and is pretty good in that regard. But of course, I do recognise when lockdown is removed, there will be nervousness around staff returning to London, commuting to London. The space in the office will be a challenge. So for me, that social distancing point at the moment is more around our operation and how we work within our offices, as opposed to the interaction with the clients. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. I'd now like to welcome Dalgleish, who is the HR director of Collier Bristow law firm, and talking a little bit about some of the challenges that she and her peers have been facing pretty much over the last month. And I'm delighted that she can join us today. Over to you, Jan.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, it has been a very challenging few weeks, and I think HR departments, I'm sure they've already stepped up to the mark, but I think it has been a challenge. It has been an enormous challenge, and I think for me, it's also been a great learning opportunity, because you're having to respond to all the different queries that are coming through, the board decisions, and making sure that they're implemented in a way that is empathetic, and also taking on board why we're doing these measures. And we have taken on some measures to actually try to help protect jobs, obviously keep the sustainability of the firm going, while we are looking at the pipeline of work that's coming through. And we have, in the last few weeks, we have furloughed some of our business services and some of our secretarial staff. So that was a challenge themselves, particularly in terms of the selection. There wasn't a great deal of time to do that. But I think we got people on board. You've always got the survivors as well, the secretaries, and they've been working, we've got 12 of them working together very collaboratively, and they're having team meetings with one of our, my HR manager. So, and then we've also all taken a pay cut right across the firm, from equity partners down. We've had different thresholds depending on the salary that people are on. There have been some challenges. Most people were abiding by our values of collaboration and accepting. We've had a few challenges from some litigators, which probably isn't entirely unexpected. So we've been working through those at the moment. But I think one of the major issues that I have found is, how can I put it? We did quite a bit of work around working from home just before the lockdown happened. We got some really good communication out, and that was very, very receptive. But from an HR perspective now, I think we need to now start focusing on the well-being, be it financial, mental well-being, and also making sure that people are still developing their careers. So the next phase for me will be looking at the whole wellbeing piece, more of the development piece, and also learning and development, to make sure that we're still on track with that. I think one of the good things that we have done, and many, many other organisations have done this as well, is having your equivalent of chief executive doing broadcast messages, if not on a weekly basis, certainly every 2 weeks, State of the Nation. I think that sort of can help with any of the change initiatives that one has done, and certainly it helped in setting the message for the furloughing and the pay reduction as well. So I think it goes back to the points made. Communication's so important. It needs to continue right through this process. And I think more so now with the lockdown happening, continuing, that we need to keep, abreast of the way that people are feeling. I think team meetings have been fantastic, although probably very exhausting, because you're having a number of those sub-team meetings, but it's a way of connecting in with people. And certainly the feedback we've received is that people are, responding to those very well. But like with every law firm and every organisation, it's very important that we keep the pipeline of work continuing, that we keep the clients engaged, and in terms of the BD type activities, people, our lawyers have been contacting their clients. There's obviously been some social media. We've, like with many other firms, obviously sending out information to clients as well. But I think it goes back to a point that someone raised in one of your sessions before, Richard, is that we don't want to be too bombarded with information. It's picking up the phone, engaging with people, and maybe getting back to some basics that we seem to have lost with the age of emails and texting and things like that. Because I think, after all, we are humans, and it's really, really important that we keep the conversations going. So I think it's been an interesting challenge. I think one of the things I'm recognizing is that people who've got very, very strong affiliation needs, who are very sociable, are finding it much more difficult than perhaps people who are more self-contained. I'm not saying if you're looking at extroversion and introversion, I think those are some of the things that will evolve in terms of personality types as the lockdown still continues. And I think from an HR perspective, we need to just be conscious of people who perhaps have greater need to socialize or interact with people. And I think hopefully through some of the development initiatives and continuing initiatives that we've launched recently, we can sort of help those people.
Yeah, that's great. I think the point that was made around white noise, that if everybody suddenly starts pushing out white papers or whatever, then no one's ever going to read them because they will just get lost in the white noise. So thank you for that point from the previous session. Right, I'd like to invite Tim now to come and share a little bit from his, so he's the Professor of Entrepreneurship, he's Deputy Dean of the Sheffield University Management School, and he's also an active advisor to Innovate UK, as well as running pretty major research projects. So it's great to have your perspective on what you're doing, but also how universities are coping with becoming virtual.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Good morning, everyone. So, yeah, just to start on that first point, the University of Sheffield and the Management School in particular, huge operation of trying to turn what I would refer to really as kind of traditional classroom-based activities online in a very short period. And I think huge credit to the efforts that have gone on, and we will see as term kicks in from next week after the Easter recess to see how that goes about being delivered. But a huge operational challenge for the university, and one that kind of resonates with some of the things that have been said here and some of the poll results in previous weeks about upskilling, getting people to use those technologies in the most effective way to communicate and engage with our learners. And those learners aren't just full-time, we've got part-time and exec and professional learners as well. So a period that's exciting but challenging, and I think that resonates for me with some of the poll results, that potentially one that we're not going to move away from. I think that there are some legacy effects there, if we've seen in the comments on the poll today, that will persist beyond the end of the social distancing measures. In terms of kind of talking to you this morning, I've got kind of three things that I really wanted to talk about and share and offer as well. I think the first, Richard's mentioned the project that we are engaged with and the Managing Partners Forum is a partner in. And this is something called Innovating Next Generation Services. Now, when we started this work, it was very much about trying to look at the really kind of the uptake of AI technologies in professional services firms, what we're calling the next generation services firms. This is funded under the industrial strategy. I think that should have been one of the questions on the poll this week. Who's familiar with the industrial strategy? And for the firms that we've worked with, the answer generally is not very familiar at all, but actually this is a kind of major flagship government policy, which is very much about trying to kind of engage and ensure the future productivity and competitiveness of a variety of different sectors, of which one of the focus here is on particularly legal, accounting and insurance services. Our project very much focused on mid-tier firms, and we're looking at this sector, which is a significant proportion of the legal and accounting sector, and trying to think about how we can work with them to try and ensure their future competitiveness through the effective development and uptake of some of these AI technologies. And one of the phrases that was used earlier this morning by Francesca was around scenario planning, and the project itself uses scenario planning and works with firms using a design sprint approach to try and look at how they can best benefit from the opportunities that AI technologies afford and actually address some of the organizational challenges around their implementation. And I think the crisis has really kind of brought this to the fore. In the previous polls, we've heard quite a lot about the appetite for technological change and its increase as a result of the crisis. I think one of the things that we're now beginning to do as a project is to slightly pivot where we were. We recognized that there was going to be a train coming down the tracks that could potentially impact many of these mid-tier firms, both through the investment of larger firms, but also the challenger firms around the use of AI technology. But as the appetite for technologies increased in many firms as a result of the crisis, I think there's an opportunity there. And one of the things that's been really interesting, and Jeremy kind of mentioned about revisiting the business plan in Q1, I think it's also about the business model for me. It's about firms thinking about what can change and what needs to change and what that might mean for future competitiveness. So in terms of kind of business model change, one of the things that we do with the work that we're involved with is really kind of looking at how firms need and can change. Now, Richard's kind of talked a bit about the work that I do with Innovate UK. A few years ago now, one of the things that I was working on with colleagues there was really this idea that when we talk about innovation, we often think about a widget or a technology. But for business model innovation, and something that's particularly pertinent for professional services firms, is not just thinking about the kind of innovation in the firm context around technology, but what about the opportunities for enhancing customer client experience? What about the work that needs to be done in the background about thinking about the configuration of the organization? So we heard Jan talking a moment ago about the changing profit share, perhaps the draw that's being taken from partners, how that's changing across the firm. But actually, what are the other things that need to happen around the profit model, around the remuneration to try and ensure the future sustainability of the firm? And I think that now is the time to do that. I think there is an opportunity here. We recognize that there has been this kind of hand-to-mouth survival instinct, quite rightly, but actually what we now need to think about is the resilience of firms, and we need to look forward with that resilience as well. So we recognize that many firms don't want to be technology firms. What they want is technological solutions to particular problems. And I think that one of the key things for me is that the crisis has actually made some of those problems much more acute. And it's now thinking about how they can be addressed, how those different groups within the firms can actually support that challenge and ensure that that contributes not just to the bouncing back, but really the bouncing forward of firms, recognizing that some of the responses from last week around the fact that 61% of firms thought that the challenges around the business model would need to change, but then nearly 80% said that these changes would to some degree be long-lasting or permanent in their effect. So if we can think about it in this way, I think there's a huge opportunity within the sector to try and not just kind of show the resilience and come back thinking about current clients, but thinking about what the opportunities are moving forward. So again, some of the poll responses from last week that we've been trying to do some follow-up work with, talking to a number of different firms about the nature of the investment they've made. So we saw that 72% of firms during the crisis have actually invested more in technology. A lot of that has been around software, others around hardware, but 25% of respondents on last week's poll highlighted that they've invested in both software and hardware. Some of that, and the majority we think, and some of the responses we've heard through the interview work has been around remote working, but there's also an opportunity here about enhancing the way and the levels that the service is provided to the client. So really interesting this week to hear that 47% of you guys on the call regard the fact that you can provide your full service virtually. And I think that it's about trying to think about what that current full service is and what the future service is, and how we can actually build that into the business model moving forward. So trying not just to plan based on the current scenario, but thinking about how this becomes the new reality in the future. So just to finish, I'd kind of like to put it out there. The project is ongoing. We are continuing through to March 2021. And during that period, if there is anyone on the call that would like to talk to us, that would like to engage, we have been into a number of firms trying to host design sprints to try and help people think through about business model change, about the adoption of technology, not just to try and become kind of integrated with the latest kind of basic level of text, but more about enabling and disruptive text that can really support the development and competitiveness of the business model moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. And perhaps the point he might have made is that this is all funded by government. Isn't it nice that government, rather than just taking our taxes, is actually putting some money back into our sector for pretty much the first time in terms of certainly the R&D space. So again, that's why we're really excited to partner with Tim on this project. Right, I'd like to now invite Graham Durgan to share his thoughts on non-executive director training and other related matters.
Richard, thank you, and thank you for inviting me this morning. You asked me quickly to introduce myself because I haven't been on the call before. So quickly, PwC trained, entrepreneur, worked in areas such as marketing services, advertising, PR, recruitment, training, publishing. We've had things like car dealerships, ski holiday businesses. Something of relevance because it's missing today is satire. And at one time I controlled a business called Spitting Image before I sold it. Ultimately, I believe, to the Conservative Party, but that's another story. Where I come from, it's very interesting. This absolutely plays to the way I am and the people that work with me work. We have kind of three criteria. We believe in listening to people, so excuse me talking. We believe in something called cut the crap and just getting on with life and not having unnecessary meetings. So this is pretty good news. And we have another thing, which is JFDI, which stands for Just Do It. So just do it, cut the crap, but listen to people so you understand, so you're aware of what's going on. Today, personally, I act as a board member or chairman of businesses that range in size from 8 people to 46,000 people. The businesses, the Non-Executive Directors Association is a small association we set up. It's got over 5,000 people involved in it now. It gets people's jobs, but more importantly, it encourages diversity of thought from having diverse members of boards. Our belief is that gets you better and more intelligent decisions. We have Emerald Wolf, which is the very well-known training business, and actually it's made absolutely zero difference to us, this fiasco that we're going through at the moment, because we've been training online for over 15 years. We have a publishing business, we have a PE firm, and we have a strategic consulting business. So what's happened so far? What's happened so far in the businesses is both the ones that we run and the ones that we advise is obviously cash is king. We all know that. People have made the point about communication mattering, and it does. And I agree with the point that it has to be done personally. Jan made the point it's best if it's done from the top, and so that there is at least a weekly broadcast from somebody saying, look, this is where we are, this is where we're going. It's important also, of course, to broadcast to clients, and we insist that at this time we all of the businesses we work with categorize their clients and really focus on account management. And it's okay, you've got to survive, so you've got to get your internal cash right, but you've also got to sort out that account management, and whoever is doing that at the moment is going to win, actually. And somebody was telling me yesterday in a meeting, oh, well, why can't we go and try and sell stuff to new people? And I said, because you'd be stupid. Effectively, it's like fishing. You've got the river. You might as well fish that stretch of the river that put your fly that the fish takes on that piece of the river and float it down. And if there are people in there that they might well take another fly off you, so put that one in as well. Get some more business out of existing people. This is the old Ansof's analysis stuff for benefit of Tim. Culture matters. I think it's very important. I was interested in Jan's comments, because if you now behave in a way that is against your culture, she was saying that you've got an inclusive culture, but people are now operating in a way which is not so inclusive. I think that can send a very bad message. And so actually the chief executive or whoever has to actually really stand behind their culture at this time and actually rigorously enforce it. Clarity, it's very important at this time to know who's in charge. It's also very important actually to encourage a lot of coaching in the business. In our training business, one of the big programs that we're having huge uptake on is a kind of how to coach people type program. And the people that are coming on it are the senior leaders of businesses who frankly should have done it earlier but didn't. And I would say that COVID has become an excuse to do things that perhaps make decisions that should have been made earlier. I think Jeremy was making that point, and I think he's absolutely right. So where do I think the next steps are? The planning stage, absolutely right. We've got if you take the kind of the strategic planning, Richard made the point that people should be changing their plans. Actually, very few businesses, in my experience, have a proper strategy. They have tactical approaches, but they don't actually have strategies. And strategy is simple. It's analysis, choice, implementation. It can be done very simply. People overcomplicate it. And one of the things that we're doing is making certain that all the businesses update their strategies. Interestingly, okay, we've got to survive, but this is going to be an extraordinary opportunity for the businesses that do. So what are they going to do about it going forward? From the recruitment businesses we work with and own, people are recruiting non-executive directors, and the accounting and legal spheres, people are now recognizing that having that extra level of wisdom on the boards really might have helped, or really would help, or maybe actually in a couple of businesses I'm aware of didn't help and therefore needs to be changed. So there's a real review of the NEDs sitting on boards. Senior management change. I thought that in most of the recruitment businesses we'd see a complete stop in business. Actually, there hasn't been. And it's interesting because it's a real opportunity. Chairmen are taking the opportunity to really sort out their boards, recognizing that things going forward are going to be different, and recognizing perhaps they haven't got the skills they need there. On the account management I've spoken about, training, in that space, there is suddenly a recognition that training has been done on a very sheep dip basis. In fact, somebody's gone on this program, somebody's gone on that. Whoever referred to the fact, I think it was Francesca, about how training is now suddenly being implemented across the board. Yes, the real driver behind the training that we're involved with is around consistency within office, across offices, within country, across countries. And people are taking the opportunity to drum that in and to do it from a knowledge-based perspective, and then put some coaching over the top, and I can talk about that more later. The new normal is actually what a business is doing. Of course, they're making certain they've got enough cash. They're also making certain that they've got enough credit lines to seize the opportunities that are going to come when it starts to calm down. And so we've got massive credit lines being arranged with banks at the moment and with other lenders in order for people to benefit from the M&A opportunities that are going to follow. The boards, as I referred to, they're being changed. They're planning. They're putting in place proper strategies. They're starting to also think about the way that they run their agenda. I noticed Jeremy talking about agendas. The boards that we work with now have 4 items on their agenda, and they are strategy, risk, people, performance, and that's it. And that way we have got complete consistency across all the boards that we're involved with. Richard, I'm sorry that was a bit of a canter, but I wanted to get it done and out within the 5 minutes. Thank you.
That's great. And then actually, obviously, we've got the video, so people will be able to go back and look at your words and pause if they need to, because there was a huge amount of content there. So thank you hugely for that. And you're right about coaching. It is something that actually the leader as coach is something that people pay lip service to sometime. But if you don't get that bit right as well, then a lot of those great strategies are very, very hard to implement. Right. We've now kind of just nearly come to the end of the sort of what I call the 5-minute sessions. And we've also got Lucy on the call, who, as I mentioned earlier, is from Bays. Lucy has been working away hard at coming up with some responses to the various questions that we shared with you a week or so ago, and they will be published a little bit later today, you'll be pleased to hear. But I know, will encourage you to put forward more questions, because obviously this is an important group to government, because mid-market is often the hardest group of all for government to access. Lucy, do you want to add anything quickly before we go into the sort of round robin session?
Not really, just I'm really pleased that we can finally share the answers with you that our team's been working really hard on. And I did just want to kind of reiterate, please use this brilliant channel as a way of funneling questions through and getting intelligence from government where you can, and any feedback's incredibly useful. As you can probably imagine, our policy is being reviewed and analysed on a daily basis at the moment, so any feedback from business is really important.
We've got a couple of questions which we will start on, but if there are any questions on the Q&A, if you want to just put your ideas in. All the panelists can see the questions. There's one that Francesca's already answered, which looked at sensitivity about ability to keep in touch with furloughed staff. And in other words, are they kind of cast out in some void, or how you stay in touch with them? And there's one active one, which is about the biggest challenges that team leaders are facing in managing remote teams. Those are the two questions we have at the moment. Would either Jan or Francesca like to comment on those? Perhaps Jan, you'd like to give some thoughts to the challenges of team leaders in managing remote teams.
Yeah, we have team meetings on a weekly basis, and so I think they are being very well received, and also it means that people are keeping in touch with one another. I think one of the things that we need to look at is how we're doing things more firm-widely as well, because are we also operating in a bit of a silo with just the teams that are happening? But no, I think they're talking about activity levels. They're talking about what some of the pressures may be. They're discussing business development. So I think it's really engaging people on concentrating also going forward, looking at the pipeline of work, and making sure people are on track. And I think that has been extremely helpful and beneficial. So team meetings, and it's brilliant that Microsoft Teams has come into the fore, and I think people are sort of reacting very, very well. With regard to furlough staff, I think this is something that we are still working through. We are contacting them, but we have to be also very, very careful that they aren't allowed to contribute to any of the work or even give ideas. We've had 4 of our social committee are on furlough leave, and they're wanting to see whether they can help with social committee activities, of which, you know, they won't be able to contribute. They'll be able to participate in them, but they certainly won't be able to contribute any of the thinking. So we've got to do some work around what we're doing with those furloughed staff, and they've been furloughed for the last 2 weeks. So there's some work to be done next week on that. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Tim, there's a question for you about design thinking, design sprints, and a little bit about what are they, and how might you actually use them in terms of what he describes here as bouncing forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that the project really is about is trying to kind of not say that there is an answer. It's actually about trying to understand the challenge and the problem from the perspective of the firm. So as I kind of mentioned, that one of the things that we started doing was really kind of thinking about this purely around the opportunity that AI brings to firms, and using the design sprint as a methodology to try and work with a group across the firm. In some firms, we've done that with the leadership group. In other firms, we've had a kind of a transect through the firm of individuals working in different areas at different levels. And we try and bring them together around the opportunity and challenge that AI presents. So very much working with the firm to set this up, and then spending between a day, half a day with that group of individuals to try and take some thoughts forward with regards to their business model and where there might be that opportunity to try and realize a competitive advantage through AI. We use the kind of a framework around business model innovation that really breaks things down in an accessible and rather kind of simplified way. I think that kind of Graham mentioned earlier that there's no need sometimes to overcomplicate this. It's very much about trying to make things that are going to be useful and make a difference. So we try and encourage the firm to think about the opportunities of AI in terms of the offering or the product to the client. Also to think about the way in which the experience of the client can be enhanced. And finally, around the configuration internally. And we kind of explore issues with those individuals that are there with a view that they can have at the end of it some sort of plan to take forward, either in terms of a business planning and business model development exercise, or otherwise something that they can use within a particular group to pilot an idea. So very much a hands-on exercise, thinking about what the particular problem is. Is it about the use of data? Is it about making more of it? Is it about more effective interaction, that kind of blend of physical and digital interaction, where the business model may be more premised on the physical, but has now been forced more into the digital, and how you can create value around that. So like I say, half-day exercise, bring people together, trying to use our approach, the intelligence we've got, the scenarios that we've developed to try and say, how will this impact your firm? So yeah, be delighted to hear from anyone that wants to kind of get involved a bit more and find out more details on the approach we use.
Thanks very much, Tim. Graham, does anyone else want to add to that one?
Oh, sorry, Richard, I was just going to jump in there because I know I'm
Please
a huge fan of design thinking. I think it's a really nice way of doing a build on somebody's idea, then think a bit more. It becomes a very, it works incredibly well digitally. I think often design thinking is done in a room with lots of people, but actually digitally, particularly if you've got whiteboarding facilities within your tech, it can be an incredibly good way to make sure people keep building on what someone started off thinking about, and is terrific around scenario planning, and incredibly effective. So well worth a try.
Great. Graham, there's a couple of questions which I think possibly are focused a bit more at you. Hopefully you can see them. One is around your comment around the crisis and the excuse for making decisions that should have been made earlier, and therefore that might lead to greater consolidation. Now, whether that's a good or a bad thing is a moot point, but changes in the way the sector's structured, if you like. And there was also one around governance, and does the role of the NED likely to change in a governance context? Do you have any thoughts on those two?
Okay, starting with the first one, will there be consolidation? Absolutely, there will be. Yeah, there's going to be massive consolidation in the firstly between the firms 6 to 10, and then below that, for all sorts of reasons. It won't just be because somebody's run out of cash and somebody needs to plug the hole, and therefore you get a merger because of that. That will happen, but it will also happen because people are stepping back from their firms a bit. And they're thinking, how much longer do I want to do this? What's going to happen, etc., etc. The other thing that's going on, I don't know if you know, but there are some issues running in maybe some of the smaller firms where there's been changes in management, and my view is that there is going to be some of it hasn't been terribly constructive, and as a result of that, partners will start to leave, the firms will start to self-destruct. And it doesn't have to be a complete kind of merger of firms that happens here. There's going to be a lot of movement of teams, I think, as a result. The answer to your second question, the role of the NEDs, my view is that most firms don't use NEDs properly. One of the issues with NEDs in a crisis like this is their speed at being able to be part of the decision-making processes, and the best NEDs are genuinely available. It's a lesson probably in 2 or 3 things. 1, communicating with your NEDs and that they understand the business. 2, that they're there for you, and therefore they're not overboarded, and they haven't got 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 boards. They're there for you at this sort of time. The role of the chairman is absolutely fundamental. If you are a chief exec, and many people on this call are, you will know that the chairman can make or break a business at this time in their ability to run meetings effectively, not to dominate them, let the executives get on with things, but help in the background, steering and advising, and being a sounding board. My personal belief in this crisis is that the most critical role in any business at this time is actually not the chief executive, it's the wise chairman, who people can bounce ideas at and will steer the board as a whole towards the safe harbor, and to act as that kind of, it's back to this coaching type role, but it's also being aware. I mean, a really good chairman is linked into numerous networks and really has an extremely good perspective about what's happening in both the industries that are on this call, but also other industries as well.
Thanks very much, Graham. We've probably got time for one more question. This one relates to fairness, and again, it's regarding furloughing and the extent to which those who are furloughed may feel, I'll get it right, so that they may feel that there is somewhat demotivate others who are perhaps taking a big pay cut. So do you go for reduced working days, or do you go for a pay cut? Jan, you kind of perhaps want to have a perspective on that one. It's Neil's question. Thank you, Neil.
With furloughing, we selected across the board, looking at, if you look at the secretarial population, so we would try to be fair across the board in terms of the 24 secretaries that we had. So it wasn't an easy decision, and hopefully we were fair, looking at the skill base, looking at different factors that people bring, and so that's what we did. With the business services, it was a lot easier because some people, say in general office, we didn't need all the people in general office, so because they couldn't actually do some work remotely, that was a bit easier to do the furloughing. So that was a really challenging week in making those decisions, but fortunately they were accepted. We had a few people asking questions why they had been furloughed, and hopefully we gave the right responses to that. But we did try to adopt a fair and consistent approach, and hopefully people have accepted and will continue to accept that. The other question was about the pay cut. Was that correct?
Well, there was a question of do you go for a pay cut or do you go for reduced days? That was really the question. In other words, which is one fairer than the perceived to be fairer than the other?
Yeah, we've had maybe a little bit of pushback because we did take a pay cut, and people are working 5 days a week, or it depends on what if they've got part-time arrangements as well. So yeah, we did take a pay cut. We didn't do working 4 days a week and taking the 20% cut. So we've done it on the basis of working 5 days a week and a 20% cut. So is it fair? I don't know. I think hopefully people are working for the good of the firm, that we got to keep activity levels up, that hopefully when we come out of this, then we can look at what we do with salaries going forward. But I think it's really important that we're all in this together. We all got to work together, and we've all got to come out of this together. And I think collaboration is one of our values, and hopefully we can still continue with this during this period.
So what I'll do now, if I may, is just quickly take you through what's coming up next. The video of today will be appearing in the Management Library shortly. For those of you who haven't been in the Management Library, it's a really great resource. It's got 8 videos in there from this series, both these ones and also sharing. The next sort of Hear from Experts is coming up on the 22nd of April. That's Wednesday. It's about reputation management. It's a 20-minute webinar, and that's recorded as well. And it only remains to say, I hope you found today valuable. I'd like to thank the panel members. I'd like to thank Jan, Francesca, Jeremy, Tim, and obviously Lucy as well coming in, and Graham, so that we've had a really, I think, good, interesting range of perspectives today. Some of them will work, some of them you'll think don't quite work for you, but that's normal and natural. But hopefully this will help you as leaders manage your firms. And we look forward to welcoming you, many of you, back next week. And please encourage your peers to register for future episodes, because what we're trying to do here, what the forum is trying to do here, is to help people share challenges at a time when sharing is probably the most important thing that we can all do with each other as we're all sitting in isolation. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day and a great weekend when you get there. Bye for now.